It's such a pleasure to be here and a privilege, and thank you, Steve, and all of the team that has put on this amazing conference. It's such a privilege to be a part of this, and I thank you all for being here on this beautiful, beautiful day. So today I'm going to be talking about eating for life, designing an optimal diet. And when I think about an optimal diet, I mean, we all have a little bit of a different definition of optimal, but to me the important factors are, number one, the diet has got to maximize health and well-being. It's got to support a person's healthy body weight, so you won't be overweight or underweight. It's got to minimize risk of all chronic diseases. It needs to meet our needs for all essential nutrients. It's got to be satisfying, appealing, and culturally and socially appropriate for us. Last but definitely not least, it has got to be ecologically sustainable and ethically justifiable. So when we think about the healthy people who consume healthy diets and who truly enjoy optimal health, we can't help but talking about the blue zones. And the blue zones are really regions of the world where people commonly live to be 90 or 100 years of age. There are many centenarians within the blue zones. But not only do they live to be 90 or 100 years of age, but at those advanced ages, they're healthy, they're out gardening, they're doing really well. They're not on 14 medications. There are 5 well-recognized blue zones: Okinawa, Japan; Sardinia, Italy; Seventh-day Adventist Vegetarians of Loma Linda, California; Icaria, Greece; and the Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica. And if you look at what lifestyle practices are common, the common thread that we can weave through all of these populations, there's certain lifestyle practices that are a little bit unique within each of these populations. This is just 3 of the blue zones, a Venn diagram of 3 of the blue zones. Some are shared by 2 or more populations, but there are 6 lifestyle practices that are common to every blue zone on the planet. And they are strong sense of family. These people are socially engaged. They do constant moderate physical activity. They don't smoke. They all consume, and 2 things where diet is concerned: they all consume plant-based diets, and they all consume legumes. You know, I'm just going to go back for a second, because tomorrow the entire lecture is looking at diet and disease and what we know about the link between diet and disease and the various populations. And so just touching on it lightly here, but tomorrow that will be the entire lecture. So in terms of optimal health, we know the healthiest populations in the world are eating plant-based diets. And the evidence for plant-based diets is actually really strong. And I show this quote from Marion Nestle because of really who she is. I don't know if you're familiar with her work, but she wrote many books, Safe Food and the Food Politics. But she was a former senior nutrition policy advisor for the government. She was NYU head of the nutrition department for years. She was even a senior editor for the Surgeon General's report back in 1988. And the reason I show this is because I want you to understand that this is not controversial in the mainstream scientific community. Scientists know that plant-based diets are most appropriate for human health. And Marion Nestle says there's no question that largely vegetarian diets are as healthy as you can get. The evidence is so strong and overwhelming and produced over such a long period of time, it's no longer debatable. But plant-based diets are not foolproof. There are no animal products in a lot of potato chips or soda pop or other junk foods. People can put together a diet that is based on plant foods that's actually really unhealthy. So what we're going to talk about today is 10 steps to a truly optimal plant-based diet. And step 1 is make whole plant foods the foundation of the diet. What we want to do is aim for at least 10 or more servings of colorful vegetables and fruits each day. I was adding up my numbers this morning, just wondering where I'm at, and I'm at about 14 to 16 on most days. And I'm not a 200-pound man. So I think that we just need to recognize that these are foundational foods. We need at least 3 or 4 servings of greens, a couple servings of red, a couple servings of orange yellow, a couple servings of purple blue, a couple servings of white beige, because all of these different colorful foods provide us with different beneficial components. And the U.S. recommendations aim for feasible rather than optimal. They recommend at least 2 to 3 servings of vegetables and 1.5 to 2 servings of fruits a day. That having been said, almost no one in the United States meets even these feasible recommendations. The average is less than 1% of adolescents, about 2% of men, and about 3.5% of women meet the U.S. recommendations. And guess what? Guess what they included when they looked at the number of servings people were eating? They included French fries and ketchup amongst vegetables, and they included jam and jelly with fruit. So this is really scary. This is really quite frightening. Why do we need these foods? They're nutrient-dense foods, and nutrient density is all about nutrients per calorie. What do we get for our calorie? What we want to do is we want to get the most from every calorie consumed. We want to select foods that contribute to health rather than undermine it. Okay, so think of this. If a person has a disease, it's kind of like their house is on fire. Everything you put in your body will either serve as gasoline or water. And think about this. Every single cell is a product of what we eat. We think of food as fuel, but food is so much more than fuel. It's the building blocks with which our brain is made of. Every cell in our body. So if we're eating junk constantly, no wonder our bodies are not functioning optimally. We have heard a lot from Dr. Furman. This is his nutrient density index. So at the top, green leafy vegetables, other non-starchy vegetables and fruit. Then you've got other plant foods and fish. Then you've got animal products, and at the bottom of the list, you've got French fries and vegetable oil. Well, when you dip food in oil before you eat it, it dilutes the nutritional density. And oil has very few nutrients. So it's mostly calorie. To me, mostly calories. To me, oil is to high-fat plant foods like sugar is to high-carbohydrate plant foods. We've extracted a macronutrient and left everything of value behind. The phytochemicals, the antioxidants, and so forth. We want to be including legumes or legume products on a daily basis, in my view, because these are the foods that are our most concentrated sources of protein, iron, zinc, and some other trace minerals, and also fiber. So they're very, very valuable foods in plant-based diets. There's an interesting study that looked at food intake patterns of people 70 years plus and found that the only statistically significant food indicator of longevity was legume intake. For every 20 grams, and 20 grams is about 2/3 of an ounce. Okay, so for every 2/3 of an ounce of legumes, there was a 7 to 8% reduction in mortality. Really quite stunning. We need to be including at least 1 serving, 1 ounce of nuts and seeds a day, and I would prefer to see 1 serving of each. I think these are extraordinarily valuable foods. They are underappreciated by many people in the plant-based community. There is very consistent evidence that they improve longevity, cardiovascular disease risk, diabetes, metabolic syndrome. There's moderate evidence for protection against dementia, macular degeneration, and gallstones as well. So nuts and seeds are really our primary sources of essential fatty acids. They're low in saturated fats, they're really rich in vitamin E, and most people get about half the vitamin E that they need. They're great sources of B vitamins and vitamin K. They're abundant sources of many trace minerals, many of which are difficult to get from other foods in sufficient quantity. They're high in phytochemicals and antioxidants, and they have the lowest glycemic index and glycemic load of any plant foods. So they're very valuable. And also they're high in arginine, which is an amino acid that's a very potent vasodilator, so it helps with improving of blood flow. We want to choose whole grains, but most of them should be intact. The goods on grains, well, grains are not absolutely essential. They are key sources of protein and energy for a large part of the world's population. They contribute a lot of nutrients and also about 45% of our dietary fiber. To me, a very reasonable approach with grains is to get everything else first. Get your vegetables and fruits, the more nutrient-dense foods. Get your legumes, get your nuts and seeds, and then the calories you have to play with can be intact whole grains. And some people need very few, 2 or 3 servings a day at most. And some people who are burning 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day, that they're competitive athletes, they may be able to consume more. The other thing that we often forget is the power of herbs and spices. We need to be using these foods constantly. My breakfast is sprouted grains, some fruits, I make a cashew cream, I put some nuts and seeds on, and then I often put on a little ginger and a little cinnamon, just to get the herbs and spices in. So it's a wonderful way of eating. It just boosts the flavor and all of the wonderful, powerful protective components in foods.